As a student of truth, you know that life does not just happen to you. It is not by whim or luck. In fact, you are the bringer of good into your life and the world through the work of your soul. As you study and apply spiritual principle, you will begin to align with the good God has for you. In our course, 7 Spiritual Laws of Release, we will learn 7 spiritual principles that were taught by the Master himself, Jesus Christ. Remember, dear friend, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Monday, June 7 at 7 p.m., we will study 7 spiritual laws of release. Register today at www.cynthiaaliceanderson.com. Class starts next Monday on June 7. There is still time to register, but head over to www.cynthiaaliceanderson.com to lock in your space for this important work.
Support Tech Staffing and Center for the Healing Arts present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 154, Elevate the Conversation. And now your host, Reverend Cynthiaaliceanderson.
Thank you so much for joining us today, friends. I am so happy to be with you today. Always love to be the one to say happy Monday. And, just think about it this way. The week is stretched out before you. You have all the space, all the support, all the love that you need to make it a great, great week. And friends, as I say things like this, I believe that. I believe that this week is holy for you. I believe it has sacred, infinite possibilities. And I just want to affirm that with you today, that this is a great, great week. God has amazing things for you this week, and I hope not only do you live into those things, but even discover something new as you go throughout your week. I also want to really encourage you on the journey and just invite you to be a part of the many classes, the events that I have going on this month and starting up next month, because, friends, there is a lot going on. I mean, I've got courses I'm offering. I'm really thrilled in June to be doing 7 Spiritual Laws of Release, which is a book I wrote a few years ago now. And, I wrote it for the community at Christ Church Unity Orlando. And what's happened is that many churches around the United States have picked it up and have done it. Individuals, friends, colleagues have read it, and I've gotten a lot of wonderful feedback about its impact. So I am super excited to be offering this course in June and July. So it's one of my more lengthy courses, but I encourage you to join me for it, because it will give you 7 spiritual laws of release, which of course will help you bring more goodness, more sacredness, more abundance of all kind into your lives. And yes, including money. So let's get into it today, friends. Title of today's show is Elevate the Conversation. Elevate the conversation. So I think I'm going to take this topic a little slow today. It's early in the morning that we're recording, and I am very pensive and thoughtful in the morning. It's a time when I really slow down. I listen. I'm quiet, and often you may hear in the background, even this morning, the birds singing, and my conversations happen with all that is, during this time. So this is a real sacred time for me. My candle is lit. I burned sage. I've also burned a little cedar from a friend's home in Canada that she carefully wrapped and honored me with at Christmas time. So I've got a lot of sacred energy happening right now. So I just want there to be space in this show. I want us to not be in a hurry, and I want you to really be able to take in what I'm saying about this, about about this topic. Elevate the conversation. It's so interesting that in my bringing this topic to you, I somehow feel different than I have about any other show. And I am beginning to feel this spiritual mandate to speak some of the things that are in my thoughts and in my consciousness about what's going on in the world today. And I have a deep, deep concern about the level of consciousness and where it seems to be headed as a whole for all of humanity. Not just for Florida, not just for the US, but worldwide. And the reason I called to elevate the conversation is because I think we can change the narrative. I think we can change the conversation we are having. And it sounds so simple and so basic, and it probably is. But what I've noticed is most profound things are very simple and very basic. Like one of the greatest truths I know is all is one. All is one. And there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of commentary on those three words, all is one. It's a simple but profound statement. So the talk we're having today, elevate the conversation, is such a thing. It's simple, and yet it is profound, the idea. It is profound to me. Spirit brought it to me. I'm not saying I'm profound. Spirit brought it to me, and it's my job to bring it to you. So what I've noticed as I scroll through the news feed, as I look at Facebook and the other various social media platforms, I've noticed that profanity and over-sexualized material has become the norm. And you might say, oh, yeah, well, everybody does that. Everybody cusses or whatever. Sure, we all have moments of it. But what I've seen happen in the last decade, especially even the last 3 to 4 years, I've seen this really increase where words that used to never be spoken in public, on a regular basis, and certainly were not spelled out, now are spelled out in its completion on Facebook. I've even heard spiritual teachers and leaders of all faiths use profanity or use, I say all faiths. I've heard several ministers refer to words, and I have heard also a few times ministers from their platform, or from their pulpit speaking words of profanity. And you might say, oh man, don't bring me down. We're cool. We're cool. It doesn't mean anything. Well, in fact, it does. See, during Jesus' time, he even talked about it. And people were concerned about what they were eating. And Jesus said, it's not what you put into your mouth that really matters, is what comes out. Well, many, many years ago, I was called out on this. I was working in a hospital. I was extending some of my training. I was working as a hospital chaplain, and it was an aspect of a program called CPE. It's a chaplain training program. And there was a man in my ministers group who did not use profanity at all. And we were in a meeting, and I used profanity 2 or 3 times. And he brought that scripture up into my mind, to my attention. And that Jesus said, it's not what you put in, but what comes out of your mouth. And I looked at him, and my eyes filled up with tears. And I said, you're right. I said, you're right. He said, well, I experience you as somebody who understands the sacred so deeply. And I'm shocked when I hear you say some of the words you say. And I said, you're right. And I thought, here I am coming from a spiritual movement that teaches that our thoughts, our words, our feelings, have within themselves a vibrational reality, that they have within themselves a meaning, a consciousness. And I was using these words and this profanity totally unconsciously. I don't know if I was doing it unconsciously to be a shock or to express myself. But since that time, like if I'm with friends, or I recently talked about it in a group with some students of mine, and I basically came up with several reasons we do this. So what happens in culture is when you hear enough people do it, it just becomes a part of the culture. And I have to admit it that ministers are some of the worst when they get together in the use of profanity, and they're complaining about things. So since that time with that individual bringing that to my attention about my words, I have done my best to not use those words on a regular basis. I've done my best to not use those words to express myself. And I thought it was interesting because when I was young, none of us were allowed to use profanity. And now kids in first and second grade, which it happened in my own family, kids come home and ask what certain words mean, words that they shouldn't know until they're in college. And they're in first and second grade and hearing profanity used on a regular basis. Well, of course, the kids are hearing it at home, and then they come to school and say it. Some of the kids don't even know what they're saying. So why am I saying all this? Because all of the words that we use, especially words of profanity, but all the words that we use, in fact, have a vibrational reality of their own. All words do. All words do. I've mentioned many times on the show the book, Messages in Water. I'll double check that. But it's Dr. Emoto who wrote the book, and he did a lot of experiments with water. And what he would do is he would have people say certain words and then crystallize the water into ice. And of course, what he noticed is that the time the words that were said were hate or jealousy or envy, then those words crystallized in a really different way than words of love and joy and peace and health and harmony and goodness and sacredness. So they were diametrically opposed, as a matter of fact. On the words of hatred or things, those words that were cloudy, you couldn't see, and the words that were words of life, which is life, love, happiness, joy, peace, harmony, unconditional love, sacred wholeness, health. These words appeared very, very differently. And yes, the book is called Messages from Water, Dr. Masaru Emoto. So I want to encourage you to just think about that. And one of the pieces about it, too, is that even the power of gratitude is in the book as well. The power of love, the power of gratitude. And one of the things when that book first came out that I noticed people doing, and I did it from time to time as well, was whatever their intention was, like if they weren't feeling real well, on their water bottle, they would write with a marker health or wholeness or peace or alignment. And people started really being intentional about the words that they were surrounding, yes, with their water. But we remember that we are, in medical news today, it says that our human bodies are about 60% water, but that can go up to as high as 75%. So if you believe the work of Dr. Emoto, and you believe and understand that our words have power, it would behoove us then to elevate the conversation, to not get stuck down in the mire, in the negativity, in the lower frequency energies that profanity has. Now, as I say this, I don't mean we never, say things or, in frustration or, there's times we slip and say things. This is not about trying to be perfect. This is about having an awareness and a consciousness that our words have meaning. And so what I've noticed is, as I think about that, is that profanity has basically disappeared from my vocabulary. What I've noticed in working with people and in talking with my students recently as well is that people typically use profanity, and especially, say, a decade ago, what I noticed, people were using profanity as when they were desperate, when they were overwhelmed. There was nothing else to say. So I started thinking about that and drawing a line to how we feel now. And in the last 4 to 5 years, this is when I really saw an increase. So people that I never imagined speaking words of profanity are now writing it out on Facebook. It's one of the reasons I've begun being on social media so much less. I don't want to get that into my consciousness. Number one, I'm a public speaker and leader. Number two, I don't like that it brings that into my consciousness on a regular basis, because those words, especially, there's a few, I don't even want to give the letters because that puts it in your mind. But some of those words really have violent meanings, and I don't want that energy. I don't want that vibration in my consciousness and in my world. So I'm saying all of this, friends, just to bring it into your consciousness. Every word you say has value, has vibration, has meaning. So not only from a vibrational level on profanity words, but the meaning of the words themselves are often violent. None of them, of course, are positive, which is why they're profanity words. Anytime somebody's learning a new language, they go, teach me the bad words. I think it's part of being human. All of us have an aspect, that wants to get away with things, that has some darkness, and that's normal. What is not normal is what we're seeing now, that these words and these phrases are used as commonly as, hello, how are you? So we seek to change that. We seek to change that. Already, I bet as I'm mentioning this, you're having an awareness of what you've seen lately. You may even be having an awareness of what you've said recently. This teaching is not to guilt you into something. It's to raise your awareness. And of course, I'm raising my own awareness. I have a desire for my life to be a place of love, of peace, of infinite abundance in every way. Enough love, a beautiful home, enough money, relationships that work all the time. And what I know is if I'm constantly saying words of negativity, if I am using words of the profane, then I'm bringing that energy and that vibration down, and I will not have the life I so want, I so desire, and so deserve. So we're going to go into a break, and we'll be right back as we discuss a little more about how to elevate the conversation. Thank you for joining us, friends.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partners, Support Tech Staffing. Support Tech Staffing is an innovative staffing agency built on the principle of caring about employers and employees as they navigate these new workforce and workplace challenges. If you're an employer, they want to be your human resource partner and help with the changes needed during the pandemic. If you're a candidate, they want to become your lifelong career agent to help you grow into your fullest potential. Support Tech prioritizes support over volume, integrity over profits, and will treat your business and your career as if it was their own. You can learn more at supporttechstaffing.com. That's SUPPORTEK staffing.com. And finally, we want to give a special word of thanks to Center for the Healing Arts. Center for the Healing Arts is one of the first dedicated group practices devoted to challenging, supportive, and nurturing therapy. Their dedicated therapists have a wide range of expertise, including relationship and couples therapy, individual therapy, addictions, neurofeedback, play therapy for children, adolescents, and families, and therapy for blended family issues. They also regularly offer day-long intensive workshops for relationships, addiction recovery, adult children of alcoholics, and healing trauma in the LGBTQ+ community. For more information, head over to centerforthehealingarts.com or call 407-657-8555, extension 1. We now return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthiaaliceanderson.
Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us. Again, my name is Cynthia Alice, and I'm really grateful you joined me for today's show. I'm in kind of a pensive mood. I've noticed as I've listened to shows after I've recorded them, one day it sounded like I had had a gallon of coffee. When I recorded it, I was speaking so quickly. And then the next show was a lot different. And so I'm realizing you experience my energy to a great deal, during these. And this morning, I'm up early, I'm recording early, and I'm sensing a different energy. So I'm going with it. And, this morning especially, I feel as if at times there's a way when I, can give shows, it can sound like I'm trying to convince you into something. And I think I believe so strongly in the spiritual that I want to always tell stories that elevate your process, that bring you into awareness. And today, because I've thought about this so much, I just am letting you into how I'm thinking about it and, some of the conversations I've had over the years. So today, elevate the conversation. If you've been with us first half, it's about bringing a higher energy into every aspect of our lives and not, hanging around in the profane. And I'm proud to be talking about it. I'm happy to be talking about it because it's something that needs to be discussed. And I have a lot of wonderful friends that I deeply admire. I'm even going to mention a few of them. One is Dr. Dorsey, who runs the Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association. I support him and his organization, both with my speaking and financially. It's something I really, really believe in, what he does and the work he's doing. And you know what I've noticed is I've never heard him use profane language. Never. He's always learning, always growing, always elevating the experience of himself and those around him. Right? So I want you to think about that. How are you elevating the conversation or not? A man I grew up with, he was a good friend of my dad's. They worked together a lot on our home, and so I got to know him really well. His name is Willie Wilkerson, Mr. Willie. And Mr. Willie was so important in my life, and I knew his daughter and his family, his son. And but what I noticed about Mr. Willie, he was hardworking. He taught. He was one of my brother's teachers in school. And, we just got to know him really, really well over the years. He had served in the Peace Corps, just an incredible human being. And you know what I noticed? He never used the profane. Never. My dad, who had a 7th grade education, rarely use the profane, and certainly never in a public situation, never with other adults, never with women. Occasionally, if he was building something and dropped something, or, hit his thumb with a hammer, or, or one of those real human things, every now and then you'd hear something. But in general, it just was not done. And I'd like to bring back some of that dignity. I'd like to bring back some of that energy. And I think now everything is dumbed down. We are made to believe that it's just the way it is, and this is just how everyone talks. And that's just not the case. I want to elevate the conversation. And, in my home, there's a rule that this is a safe place, and you can say whatever you want when you want. I mean, within reason. If there's a big group here, or, we're discussing, it's not okay for somebody to come in and, bulldoze the conversation. But in other words, if you have a feeling, you can say it. If you have a frustration. But what I notice is, because there's a permission that it's a safe place, profanity is almost never used in my home, almost never. And the feedback I receive unsolicited, when people walk into my home, they go, "Oh my goodness, the energy and the peace." So I believe a part of that is because there's not a lot of the profane used. And there are times in my life I have noticed where I get a little lazy and it starts to slip back in. It's an old pattern. It's, again, it's seeing it everywhere in public, and it starts to get it into your consciousness. So I think my commitment to myself around this topic is just that my home is a place of safety and peace. If somebody needs to say something here, they can, but that I do not create an environment where the profane is used in the everyday. Right? So I'm trying to elevate the conversation in my home. It's like so simple. And I certainly would not put out profane on Facebook or any social media. For one, I would not want to broadcast that type of negativity out to a group of people. Number two, I realize all is one. I'm coming all the way back to that very simple statement. And I know anytime I use words like that, a child, a parent, a grandparent is going to see that and is going to be impacted. And so I know that I'm connected to all that is. I know that as humans, we are all one. And I don't want to negatively impact somebody's journey by my languaging. I don't want to bring somebody down with this negative energy of the profane. So let's elevate the conversation. Let's elevate the conversation. One of the, I learned so many wonderful things from my parents, and, like all families, we had our, we had our own brand of dysfunction, but, one of the things my mom said at one time that I really remember, somebody was, using a bad language, and she said, "Honey, I really want you to know it's not good to talk like that." And I said, "Oh yeah?" Something like that. I was listening to her, and she said, "Well, it just shows you don't have much to say." She said, "When that's your go-to, it just means you don't have much to say." I thought, what great advice. So when you use the profane, it shows that you are in the emotive nature. It shows that you are not thinking. It shows that your soul is not engaged. It shows that you like to wallow around in the negative and the profane, in the lower energies. So anytime you're using profanity, whether you're talking about yourself or someone else, you're only talking about yourself and your consciousness. Isn't that interesting? You're showing us how desperate you feel that no other words are in your vocabulary to use. This has been a learning for me on another level with this new program I'm in. I'm in the Archetypal Dream Patterning program. I'm sorry. I'm going to start that one next year. I'm in the APA program, which is Archetypal Pattern Analysis. And so that's what I'm becoming, is an Archetypal Pattern Analyst. And, we're really trained to look for patterns, and it's helped me personally and professionally immensely. And what I've noticed, though, in that program is I'm learning a whole new vocabulary. And some of the words make me laugh and they make me giggle because I never dreamed I'd be using them, and now I'm using them every day. Well, with all this new input of these intellectual language, what I'm finding is that there's less and less room for the profane in my consciousness. With all this new language and all this new information, I'm realizing there's less and less room for the profane because it's a lower energy, and in fact sounds uneducated when you use it. So the other piece, though, I'm noticing, and I just barely mentioned this at the beginning, and I want to leave you with some of this to think about, which is the other thing that deeply concerns me is the over-sexualization of everything. And if you have kids and they're watching Netflix, be very careful. Be very careful. Some of the things I see being watched by very young people are completely over-sexualized. Everything has a sexual undertone or overtone. Even the news. We are bombarded with, who's the next politician that's been found with a prostitute and the detail that's reported on. So I'm not saying there shouldn't be news. I'm wondering about the level of detail, because what I know is all of us have a phone in our hand, including our 7 and 8 and 10-year-olds. And we have this responsibility to the younger generation to allow them to have stages of development. It's actually abusive when we allow them around images, when we allow them around concepts that they're not yet ready for. So, like, even if you don't have children and you're listening to this, I mean, do you have nieces and nephews? Do you have loved ones that you have at your home? Think about that. And then think about yourself. Our culture has become so sex addicted, and during the pandemic, it's been just completely out of hand, that the amount of pornography, the amount of attention we're giving to the sexual is really overboard. And our sexual nature is something that is to be honored. It is to be celebrated. It is to be enjoyed, as a matter of fact. But to over-sexualize every moment is an abuse of that powerful, creative, sacred, sexual energy. So just think about that and notice the next time you're watching something, all of the sexual innuendo, and ask yourself if you want to keep watching it. I am done personally with shows like that. I find them to be repulsive because they're so lower nature. And they want to bring me to a place of judging everyone about everything, including how they look, how they walk. Notice, it's in everything. So as you're thinking about, you're going to say probably as you hear this, well, what am I going to watch? Well, that's exactly the question. I'm about ready to quit watching TV altogether again. For years, I never watched TV. And then when Netflix came out, I loved it because I could watch certain things, that I chose to watch. Well, now, every time I go on Netflix, I say, what is this fascination with murder and sex? Everything is about that. So I'm trying to elevate the conversation, the energy, the vibe, the mood in my home. And I don't want that as the very fabric of everything I do. I mean, I don't want the over-sexualization. I don't want the profanity, the profane to run my household and my consciousness. And, what I've noticed about consciousness, excuse me, is that when we have like shifts and changes and lower energy coming in, what happens is that it's over time that things change, and it changes one decision after the other. But the decisions are so minor about the things we allow into our consciousness, about the things that we say, or they seem so minor at the time, like a year, 2 years from now, we can't believe where we're thinking and what we're doing, but it's because we haven't been conscious all the way along. And so my whole reason for bringing all this up is just to bring us into consciousness about how we're doing this, that we are not paying attention to the words we are saying. And friends, I am schooled, I am ordained, I have taught these principles for so many years that our words, our thoughts, our feelings have a vibrational reality. And this is just a new level for us to be thinking on, praying on, because when we are working to manifest, when we are working to live life to the fullest, we don't want these unconscious behaviors to be bringing us down into the lower nature. We want to honor those lower nature desires by putting them in their proper perspective, but not letting them run every aspect of our life. We saw with in the ministry of Jesus when he rode into Jerusalem on that little young donkey. What he was doing is showing us that the divine has power over the animal nature. So we don't pretend the animal nature isn't there. What we do is we have it in its proper place. We have it in its proper place. But friends, your life is meant to be filled with joy, with love, with peace, with abundance, with compassion, with gratitude. Your life is meant to bring you joy. Your life is meant to be a blessing and to lift others up. So I really want to encourage you in thinking about this, like, how am I working against myself, my goals, my dreams, by using these profane words when they don't even really mean anything to us? We just say them because they're there and because we've heard other people say them. So let's lift that up. Let's become more conscious beings as we go throughout life. And see, like, try it for a month, for 2 months, for 6 months, for a week, and just see if you feel any different. I guarantee you will, because everything you say, everything you do has a vibrational reality. And the question becomes, what reality do you want to be in? One of love, one of peace, one of joy? What reality do you want to be in? So notice as you go throughout your day, the things you're attracted to, the things you listen to, the things you watch, and see if you're helping to elevate the conversation. And if not, guess what? You can change all that. Let's do this work together, friends. Let's encourage each other. And remember, this is not a guilt trip. This is an awareness. If we notice we've been slipping in these areas, guess what? We can change all that. We can change all that. We're powerful, spiritual beings. I'm going to end with this statement. This is one of my favorite statements. It's what I aspire to, and it is what I believe. We are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe that is governed by spiritual law. So our prayer, my prayer for you today, is that you live your life elevating the conversation, both inwardly and outwardly, as we live a life of peace, joy, love, abundance, gratitude, and faith. Blessings on the journey, dear friend. Thank you for joining me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by Support Tech Staffing and Center for the Healing Arts. This channel is also made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2021 Cynthia,Alice,Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from R.R. Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.